and vote.
We can say that we restored our peace, but that we never restored our quiet.
Shut it down!
A vigil for the man whose death at the hands of police officers has touched off days of both peaceful and violent protests. Multiple U.S. cities are now embroiled in a level of unrest not seen in decades, and the demonstrations have spread across the border. It has been 1 week since the violent death of George Floyd. Since then, there have been many largely peaceful demonstrations in the U.S. against police violence, but there have also been dozens of clashes between protesters and police. And tonight, the U.S. president is weighing in, calling on state governors to crack down. Ellen Moore will now with the latest.
The pain so palpable for Terrence Floyd, visiting the memorial for his brother George 1 week after he died under the knee of a white police officer.
Keep my brother's name ringing.
But despite his own anger, Floyd appealed for calm, denouncing violence like this. What began as a peaceful demonstration in Washington, D.C., deteriorating as night fell.
If I'm not over here blowing up stuff, if I'm not over here messing up my community, then what are y'all doing?
Instead, Floyd urged Americans fed up with police brutality and systemic racism.
Let's stop thinking that our voice don't matter. That's right. And vote. There you go. Not just vote for the president, vote for the preliminaries, vote for everybody.
The Floyd family also released their independent autopsy today, finding Floyd died of asphyxia. The county medical officer blamed multiple factors.
The ambulance was his hearse. Beyond question, he would be alive today if not for the pressure applied to his neck.
As tensions tear across the U.S., President Trump has been criticized for doing little to calm an anxious nation. In a leaked call with governors today, he urged them to crack down.
We're strongly looking for arrests. You have to get much tougher.
Meanwhile, this somber ritual played out in cities across the U.S. The cleanup as the country readies for another night of unrest.
Thank you for the flowers. Thank you.
One the Floyd family hopes is peaceful in the name of their brother.
I just want to hear this again. What's his name? George Floyd! What's his name? George Floyd!
Ellen Morrow, CBC News, Toronto.
CNN's Daryl Forges is in Minneapolis tonight. Daryl, it's been 1 week since George Floyd's death. There was a vigil there today to mark what happened. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, Dwight, that's right. And as a matter of fact, George Floyd's brother was out here leading that vigil, and the crowd here continues to grow. We got the way, Dwight, to show you what we're seeing here right now. Right in front of Cup Foods, this is where George Floyd took his final breath. As you can see here, the people are paying homage to him with this mural, as well as flowers laid out in honor of George Floyd. And his brother was out here earlier, and he said a few words. He basically said thank you to the people who have been protesting in honor of his brother, but at the same time urging people not to loot, not to set things on fire, no violent protests. He just told people, hey, if you want to voice your opinions, go out and vote. He says that's the most important thing for people to do. Now, there's been another issue, Dwight, at this point. The independent autopsy that was performed by the family shows that George Floyd died of asphyxiation, but the medical examiner's report showed that he died based off underlying conditions, nothing about asphyxiation. So those two reports have been at odds, and the family, as you can imagine, Dwight, they are up in arms about that latest report. But at this point, people are continuing to show their support here for George Floyd. Protesters say they're not going anywhere anytime soon until all 4 police officers are put to justice. Now, Derek Chauvin, the officer that knelt onto George Floyd's knee, was supposed to have his first court appearance today. That has since been postponed to next week. Dwight?
Yeah, you're right. There are some questions there with the contradictions in those 2 autopsy reports. A lot less violence in Minneapolis last night compared to previous nights, and the governor now saying he thinks the direction of the protests has changed. What do you think?
Yeah, well, the big thing is the times that law enforcement has really enforced the curfew at 8 o'clock. Now, it has been extended, the curfew has been extended for a couple of days, and is now from 10 p.m. to 4 a.m. The governor says that over the weekend, they arrested over 500 people, 500 protesters. So at this point, they're trying to continue to restore law and order. But at the same time, though, the people out here during the day say, look, we're doing peaceful protests. We just mean well, and we want justice for George Floyd by any means necessary. But as of right now, it's been peaceful for the most part. You hear the music in the background playing. Overall, this is what law enforcement really wants, is protests like this. And talking to protesters, they say this is the type of protests they're going to continue to do.
Yeah, I think the Floyd family, they don't want anything to take away from the message here either. CNN's Daryl Forges in Minneapolis tonight. Daryl, thank you for your time. Stay safe out there.
Thank you.
Our family members are in here. Their lives matter, not the profits of the facility. You have no idea what it's taking for me not to run into that building right now.
Families pleading for answers and for something to be done as 18 residents of a long-term care home in Woodbridge were sent to hospital this weekend. Many of them had COVID-19. We'll bring you the family's message a little later in the show. CBC News has learned a hospital in the GTA failed to notify public health units about hundreds of positive tests for COVID-19. Queen's Park reporter Mike Crawley joins us now with more. And Mike, the mix-up means potentially thousands of people who had contact with those patients were never told.
Yes, Dwight, we're talking about 700 positive tests. They date back as far as April, and some of them are as recent as within the last couple of weeks. The tests were all conducted by the William Osler Health System. They've got hospitals in Etobicoke and Brampton, but the bulk of these tests were done at the drive-through assessment center that William Osler is running in Etobicoke. So what happened is that those tests were then processed by another hospital's lab, but William Osler never reached out to the public health units to tell them about the positive cases. That then meant that public health did not do any contact tracing. So we're talking potentially thousands of contacts that were not informed about the fact that someone who they were in contact with was positive for COVID-19. And this oversight, it was just discovered on the weekend. We found out about it today. This is an exclusive CBC story. And when we reached out to contact provincial officials and folks with the hospital, their explanation is that they also only found out about this over the course of the weekend.
Any real explanation then as to how did this happen?
It's the obvious question, Dwight. The best explanation we've had so far is from a source who is informed about this, that the William Osler system thought that because these tests were being processed by the Mount Sinai lab, that it was up to Mount Sinai to do the to inform public health, and that is not the case. It was actually up to William Osler Health System to do that. It's of course just the latest issue with the province's testing system. You now have this situation where hundreds of people, hundreds of cases were not flagged to public health. There have been problems with backlogs in testing, of people being unable to find their results, with questions around who's eligible for the tests and the number of tests being done. In this case, we're told that the people who did test positive, they were able to get their results by going on to an online portal. But again, public health units weren't able to go and reach out and do that contact tracing. And I'm told now that that's actually going on right now as we speak.
But it may be a little late. Okay, thank you for this, Mike. Ontario's watchdog is now looking into how the province has handled outbreaks in long-term care homes during the COVID-19 pandemic. As Lisa Shing explains, it comes after the Canadian military's scathing report last week on conditions inside some of the homes.
For the past few months, Dwayne Simon's mom, Telsita, has been smiling more and eating better, and she's now recovered from COVID-19. He says that's all since he took her out of Orchard Villa long-term care home to take care of her on his own.
I think I pulled her out just in the nick of time, because when I did, everything was just catching fire.
Orchard Villa has seen the highest number of infections in the province, one of several homes the Canadian military is supporting.
There needs to be an investigation so that moving forward, we can learn from the mistakes that were made and hopefully long-term care in the future will be better for everybody.
Last week, the military released a scathing report into 5 long-term care homes members of the armed forces were helping in. It found abuse and neglect of residents, insect infestations, and staff that were using equipment between infected and uninfected residents.
It painted such a shocking picture of what was going on. I thought we have to contribute to this conversation.
The Ombudsman will review the standards and policies for long-term care during the pandemic and oversight, including how the Ministries of Health and Long-Term Care handled complaints and inspections, how they supported homes during the crisis, and communication with the home's residents, staff, and the public. Premier Doug Ford welcomes the investigation.
I need answers. I want answers.
Dwayne Simon does too. He also says the government should have acted sooner.
When Doug Ford said they're going to put an iron ring around long-term care, they should have locked it down completely, where not just banning families from coming in, but they should have also implemented that all workers wear proper protection.
Simon is hoping the Ombudsman's investigation will help fix a broken system, but until then, he might just retire early to take care of his mom full-time and avoid sending her back into long-term care. Lisa Shing, CBC News, Toronto.
The Premier also announced today that a mobile testing team for COVID-19 will be out in Scarborough tomorrow. Ford says this unit will be making stops throughout the GTA in the coming days, but already a group in Toronto has taken matters into their own hands, bringing remote testing to Moss Park.
A lot of the people here refuse to go to the hospital or get tested in other locations, so we thought this was probably one of the best ways of doing it, is coming down here and being right on the scene.
Anishinaabe Health Toronto plans to continue going to various parks, offering testing to vulnerable populations like the First Nations community and those experiencing homelessness. They've outfitted a vehicle and have a nurse practitioner with them to administer the test. They plan to return to each area with the results. While the death toll and hospitalizations from COVID-19 made headlines, others say they suffered milder causes behind closed doors. Some people are even reporting months-long illnesses, strange symptoms, and really rocky recoveries. Lauren Pelly has more.
The first symptoms that I saw were more respiratory, so difficulty breathing. My heartbeat was going off the rack. I couldn't finish a sentence, and that's when I realized I need to go to ER.
That was back in March while Hannah Way was on a business trip in Vancouver. Hospital staff told her she had a probable case of COVID-19, but didn't test her.
They sent me back with a piece of paper that I could have just found off their hospital's website.
Way wound up being sick for weeks and still hasn't fully recovered. She's now part of an online community of people with COVID-19.
I've seen a lot of stories where people are on their 10th week and they're still having a hard time getting up in the morning.
So the first 2 weeks were pretty intense.
Ottawa resident Chandra Pasma says her whole family of 5 got sick in March, with different symptoms ranging from coughing and inflammation to nausea and diarrhea.
One symptom would get better and I'd start to feel optimistic that I was through it, and then something new would set in and something totally random and strange.
10 weeks later, they're all still sick. Pasma believes it was COVID-19, even though a test result came back negative. Her physician initially told her to just stay home, and she didn't get tested until weeks later. Some experts warn test timing could cause false negatives.
There seems to be zero follow-up, and I don't know if there would be more follow-up if we were acknowledged cases.
Whether people get tested or not, physicians say true cases of milder COVID-19 may not resolve quickly.
Unfortunately, the recovery time from an illness often takes longer than we think it will. So there's the initial infectious phase, and that really does seem to last about 2 weeks in most people. But it's all the consequences that can take longer.
Way says patients with longer recoveries are falling through the cracks.
What we really want is for public health and doctors to pay more attention and follow through with patients over time.
Lauren Pelly, CBC News, Toronto.
The city of Mississauga is proceeding today with phase 2 of its plans to reopen, despite having one of the highest COVID-19 rates in the province. Linda Ward visited the area today to see how it all went.
Can we go in now?
Well, first thing this morning, impatient pooches lined up outside the gates here for Jack Darling Park's leash-free zone. It's been nearly 2 months since these dogs have been able to access this part of the park, and this morning, city staff unlocked the gates for the first time.
So I'm very excited. All of us have been in quarantine, including our dogs.
It's really great to have the leash-free open today.
This is where I start my morning, and I've really missed it.
Today, the city also reopened picnic areas, BMX and skate parks, tennis courts, and some washrooms too. Mayor Bonnie Crombie says it was time to release the hounds.
People need to get out for their mental health. They need some exercise. So this is a very risk-free approach.
And this comes not long after the mayor pushed back against the province's reopening strategy, calling for a regional approach. She says 1/3 of all COVID-19 cases in Ontario are surfacing in Peel region.
When our case numbers weren't decreasing but continue to increase, we knew we had to hit the pause button. So we're just taking a cautious approach.
And they think they figured out why cases here continue to rise.
What we're seeing is household clusters. So for instance, last week in Brampton, 3 households made up for 45 of the 90 cases in one day. So that's the kind of thing we are seeing. And then workplace reopenings. As non-essential businesses are coming off the list and people are going to work, they forget about physical distancing.
But despite the number of reported cases, people in this dog park say it was time they were given a little more leash.
A big park like this, there's lots of space in here for, safe distancing and everything.
Tell that to Cody here. Linda Ward, CBC News, Mississauga.
Yes, I know the pooches were really happy to get into the park, and I know that I see the big smile on your face. Open up the off-leash parks, let our dogs roam, right?
Yeah, it's so nice to see. It makes everyone happy, quite frankly, the dogs and the owners as well. I think this is going to make you happy, too, when we take a look at what we're going to be seeing with our temperatures over the next few days. We are looking at the beginning of this month with those readings being not just seasonal, but actually a little bit above. So they're going to be on the mild side through the week. We've got some showers moving in for tomorrow and kind of bookending the day, maybe a few thunderstorms in there as well. And then into Wednesday, okay, there's a chance for some showers Wednesday too, but really it is looking like a good week. So let's take you through it right now. I want to point something out. These are the current temperatures. They're close to seasonal. We're at 23. That's just a little bit on the mild side. But look at the dew points. If you go back to last week when we had the very humid air at the beginning of the week, those dew points were into the high teens to low 20s. Look at how they've changed. So this is a much drier feel to the air that's been in place through the weekend, and certainly what we have today as well. We have dry conditions for now. They're not going to be hanging around. So this evening we'll see some increase in cloudiness, and then there's actually a warm front that's way back here to the west of us, but that will make its way in. And so overnight, really towards tomorrow morning, we'll start to see some showers developing. As I say, could be a few thunderstorms in there. And then what kind of happens is that after that low of 13, we'll see a dry period through the day with some sunny breaks in there, though. Into the evening hours tomorrow, we could see that return of some showers and thunderstorms. But 25, Dwight, the high. It's going to get warmer than that this week. I'll tell you about it coming up.
Thanks, Colette.
You're welcome.
The weather is brought to you by Trane, the most reliable heating and cooling brand. We test, so it runs. Take advantage of special offers now. It's hard to stop a Trane.
Like pretty much everything these days, Pride festivities will look a lot different this year.
We have to show that notwithstanding the obstacles that have been put in front of Pride, and they've responded magnificently to that we are going to celebrate and that we're going to continue to make the statements of support and solidarity and determination.
Mayor John Tory raised the rainbow and trans flags virtually this morning, marking the official start of Pride Month. For the first time ever, the annual Pride Parade will also be held virtually. That's on June 28th. Organizers have also posted other online events on their website. Mayor Tory says the Toronto sign outside City Hall will be lit in rainbow colors tonight in honor of Pride Month. She is the first Black woman chosen as valedictorian for the University of Toronto's Faculty of Medicine, and when she started, she was the only Black person in her year.
I remember more than ever that there is no immunity when encountering racism.
We'll bring you her story coming up after the break. Stay with us. The images of riots and violence in the U.S. over the past few days have been dramatic and disturbing, and they've touched off conversations about racism, injustice, and violence against people of color. Farmer Morelli is looking at ways parents can address these complex topics now with their children.
Wayne Williams and Abby Ayula's backyard feels far away from the streets of Minneapolis, but the themes hit close to home. Images of protests turning violent and police brutality have prompted some difficult conversations about what it means to be black.
I gave them examples. I told them about the time where I was falsely arrested, thrown in jail, just because I looked like somebody who did a certain crime. And they came to me, they said, "Daddy, but why? Didn't they know that you didn't do it?"
The kids feel a way about it when they see it on TV, that it's people like them getting killed by police officers. They just don't understand the fact that it's, why are they targeting people like me? Am I doing something wrong?
Tanya Hales is with the group Black Moms Connection. She says conversations about racism can start at different ages.
It can be really just something very simple. It doesn't have to be all of Black history wrapped up in an afternoon with your 5, 6, 7-year-old. But I think when they come to you or when you feel like they need to have that conversation is when it's a good place to start.
And it's not just black families that need to be talking.
It's not going to be my job, and it's not the job of Black people to do now all of a sudden all this teaching about racism. You know, this is something that you as a parent, it's now your job to learn so that you can teach your children.
As painful as it is to talk about this with her, it's not a new thing. We've been talking to her about these sorts of things, at least in abstract terms, since she was old enough to ask.
Amy Leaks is a mother and runs an interactive media company for children.
As a thinker, I think children need to be taught to question things. They need to be able to lift the lid or to turn over rocks and see what's underneath.
The biggest challenge for many parents is balancing the need to understand with the desire to maintain some sense of innocence.
I just pray that, that they'll never have to experience any of those situations, but the chances of them experiencing it is pretty high. So we are going to have to adapt to the situations that they face and, engage them in conversation.
Farah Morali, CBC News, Toronto.
When Chika Oriua started medical classes at the University of Toronto in 2016, she was not expecting to be the only black student in her class. Now, not only that, she's also the first black woman to be valedictorian in her faculty. As Talia Ricci reports, the medical class of 2024 has a lot more representation than her year did.
It was a calling that started in Chika Oriua's childhood.
I don't think there's ever any part of my conscious memory in which I don't recall wanting to be a doctor.
Tomorrow, as she officially earns that title, her valedictorian speech will also be delivered.
I was in the middle of watching the Michelle Obama Becoming documentary, and I had to pause it halfway because I was so inspired that I just sat down and wrote the entire speech in one sitting.
Despite all of her accomplishments, Oriua has faced challenges as a black woman pursuing medicine.
Even in fact, having someone state to me that, I didn't deserve to win valedictorian and that they would never allow me to take care of them as a doctor.
She continues to fight racism and use her voice through advocacy work, but her experience as the only black student in her class will not repeat itself. 24 black medical students were admitted to the class of 2024, the largest group in Canadian history.
I cried in happiness because this is such an important thing that we have to do. We are not going to be able to provide, in any way, provide health equity to our black community unless we have black physicians that are here to take care of them.
U of T says there's still work to be done, but to get here, the university developed policies over the last few years to help black students navigate the admission system, providing mentorship and reaching out to students as early as high school. Sonia Igboanugo is part of that upcoming class.
To be a part of
the history and the outcome of that advocacy it's humbling, it's surreal, and it really is just a motivator to feel like, you know, I can be here. There are people who are cheering me on.
Oriawa has this message for them.
Their place in medical school as Black medical students is rightly deserved and rightly earned, and to never question that for even a moment, even if other people question it.
Talia Ricci, CBC News, Toronto.
Young people and their needs, and our capacity to meet their needs effectively will be missed.
How are you coping during this pandemic? The Center for Addiction and Mental Health wanted to know, and the organization says young people are struggling. We'll bring you the results of a study they conducted coming up. The province reported 404 new COVID-19 cases today, saying 80 of those are migrant workers. We are also learning more today about the first migrant worker to die of COVID-19 in the province. As Jason Vio explains, all of this has many pushing for change, with the Premier promising the issue is top of mind.
It was over the weekend when a 31-year-old migrant worker in Kingsville died of COVID-19. Those who knew Bonifacio Eugenio Ramiro say he didn't have any known underlying health issues. He arrived at Woodside Greenhouses in February and was set to return to his family in Mexico in December.
Just truly heartbroken. These gentlemen come here to work to make a better life for them and their families, and they do work that Canadians here won't do.
It was back on May 21st when Eugenio Romero got a fever, and his employer took him to the hospital for a COVID-19 test. 2 days later, those results came back positive. On May 25th, the health unit tested the 21 other migrant workers who may have come into contact with him. 2 of them test positive. Many of them are isolating in hotels. And on Saturday, Eugenio Romero was taken to hospital. 30 minutes later, pronounced dead.
We even went as far as posting bulletins in their lunchrooms, on their lunchroom tables, in their washrooms, speaking with them personally, one-on-one, and as a group.
Today, Ontario's COVID-19 cases jumped by about 400, and more than 80 of those are migrant workers. And the Premier is zeroing in on their living conditions.
That's something we can put on the table, any congregate living. And I've been there. I've seen the congregate living in these farms. And you make a valid point. Can we do it within a month or so? I just don't think that's reality. But what we can do, we can go in and test frequently. I think it's critical that we do.
The Premier says he'll be pushing public health officials to test all migrant workers, but experts say it needs to go further.
So it's a time for us to really look at and develop, through collaboration with migrant workers, migrant worker groups, and all levels of government, some adequate standards.
The Ministry of Labour is currently investigating the death. The Ontario Coroner's Office says it's too soon to tell if an autopsy will be done. In the meantime, the Mexican consulate is working to return Eugenio Romero's body to his family in Mexico. Jason Vio, CBC News, Kingsville.
After 18 residents at a long-term care facility in Woodbridge were taken to hospital over the weekend, many with COVID-19, people with loved ones in the home are looking for answers. Greg Ross spoke with family members who are calling on the province to step in and help.
We just got the results just before the weekend saying she was tested positive.
Nick Tupelo says he just learned late last week that his 85-year-old mother has tested positive for COVID-19 inside the Woodbridge Vista Long-Term Care Center. Since then, he's had no update on how she's doing. He can't see her or talk to her, and she also suffers from dementia.
You have no idea what it's taking for me not to run into that building right now.
83 residents and 26 staff at Woodbridge Vista have tested positive for COVID-19, but it's impacting every resident at the home and their loved ones who can't get in to see them.
I used to come every day, and now that I'm not here, I do wonder what's happening.
This woman says in the beginning she was able to do window visits with her 87-year-old father, but that was cut off once the number of cases in the home started to rise. Now she says she can't be sure if her father is getting the care he needs.
I don't know if he's being changed, washed, fed.
Family members tell me now the only way they can communicate with their loved ones that are here is by phone, and even that is growing increasingly difficult.
You call to get an update, and the phone will ring and ring for 20, 25 minutes in the nursing station, so nobody's answering the phone.
Similar problems are being felt at long-term care centers across the province. Today, the union that represents many of the healthcare workers that work in these homes held a rally at Orchard Villa in Pickering. It's one of the hardest hit long-term care centers with more than 75 deaths. The province was forced to step in and take over, and now the union wants the same at Woodbridge Vista.
I called on the Premier over the weekend to get in there and manage that home.
Colleen Stewart with SEIU says there are at least 15 locations in the province that are too short-staffed to handle this crisis.
These staff are being stretched to the limit. They're working overtime. They're working with very sick residents, so they are burnt out.
Today, the province wouldn't commit to stepping in.
If there is no indication that the management of that organization is going to cooperate with the staff that's sent in by the hospitals, then the hospitals will need to step in to provide supervision.
17 residents at Woodbridge Vista have already died with the virus. Some fear it could get far worse if they don't get help soon. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The Center for Addiction and Mental Health is studying how people across all ages are coping during the pandemic. They found that people are feeling anxious and don't know where to turn. Alicia Son looks at some of their findings.
Can you hear me okay?
Excellent.
With this study, what does it tell us about how we're doing right now?
So it tells us that young people are perceiving themselves to have a significant deterioration in their mental health. Young people are also reporting that they have experienced disruptions to their support services. And so it's really important for us to think about how we reach out to young people to make sure that they know that services continue to be available.
Researchers at the Center for Addiction and Mental Health have been looking at how people are coping during the pandemic. They've surveyed people 18 and older online and found 1/4 of respondents are experiencing moderate to severe anxiety. 23% of respondents have been feeling lonely, especially in the millennial group. 20% reported feeling depressed, and women with young children were more likely to experience depression and anxiety.
How are you doing?
Thank you for asking. Nobody does. That's sort of part of it. It's hard. I think bringing home a new baby and then being slammed in the face 3 weeks later with the global pandemic is not fun for anyone.
Lindsay Springer has 3 children.
My daughter, who's almost 4, is a mess, to say the least. She's the kind of kid who thrives with routine, with structure, with friends. So we've had a lot of tantrums. We're having a lot of trouble with bedtime with her. So normally the time when I would have a break at the end of the day because the kids are in bed doesn't exist now.
Springer hopes the CAMH studies influence some of the government decision-making that's happening right now.
To allow families to double bubble. And by double bubble, I mean, open up to another family. Having my mother to pass the baby to might give me a little bit of a break, a little bit of sanity.
CAMH is keeping on this. There are more studies on mental health underway and planned, all with the goal of producing results that will prevent a different crisis of mental health. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
Face masks are now required for all staff and passengers at Toronto's Pearson International Airport. It is just one of several safety measures coming into effect today. Terminal access will also be restricted to passengers traveling on the same day and airport workers on duty.
Less people that are in the terminals using shared facilities like washrooms, food concessions and whatnot. It's going to help eliminate further spread of the virus.
There are some exceptions, those under the age of 2 who can't remove face coverings without assistance or who have trouble breathing don't have to wear a mask. Family and friends of those requiring mobility assistance can still enter the terminal. Pearson has also added enhanced cleaning procedures and plexiglass shields to several workstations. The Premier is promising rate stability for Hydro customers affected by the pandemic.
Starting today, we're announcing the new COVID-19 recovery rate for all time of use customers.
Families and small businesses will pay a fixed rate of 12.8 cents per kilowatt hour. The rate will be in place 24/7 until the end of October. Now, the Premier added that no one will have their power cut off because they can't afford to pay their bills. Municipalities have suffered big financial losses because of the pandemic. Fewer people are paying for public transit and parking, things that cities and towns count on to raise revenues. David Cochran reports on what Ottawa is offering today.
This is strong support to keep Canadians safe and our communities strong.
It's a down payment to help cities and towns, but it isn't new money. Instead, it's a cash advance of a year's worth of transfers all at once.
In response to COVID-19, we will make available $2.2 billion for municipalities in the coming weeks through their yearly federal support with the Gas Tax Fund.
Ottawa is cutting the check, but it's not cutting the strings. This money is earmarked for infrastructure and can't be used for operations. So while it helps, it doesn't solve the central problem.
We're losing up to $300 million this year. We've had to lay off 1,800 people already.
and prepared to lay off more if we have to, just because of losses in revenues.
By law, many cities can't run deficits, can't borrow for operations. So they're slashing jobs and cutting services, while core services like transit are bleeding cash as everyone stays home.
We will have to look at some fundamental choices between services or increasing the ask of property owners, neither of which should help with an economic recovery for Winnipeggers and for Canadians.
Trudeau says he gets the message, but Ottawa can't fix it alone.
There's a range of services offered by cities that are at danger of disappearing. That's why we are doing what we can unilaterally in advancing the money forward, but we need to work with the provinces on this. Cities are the responsibility of the provinces.
So that means negotiations with the premiers with some big money at stake. Municipalities say the aid package they need to cope with COVID-19 could be as large as $15 billion. David Cochran, CBC News, Ottawa.
Call it if April showers bring May flowers, what does May bring for June then?
Well, I think it's bringing, in the case of this June, Dwight, some warm temperatures above seasonal. Tried to find a picture of Toronto Beach where people are social distancing, so that's kind of what June brings as well. This is what a normal daily high is for this month. So it's a little lower at the beginning of the month, a little higher at the end. When we average that out, 24.2. We're going to be warmer than that much of this week. A normal daily low is 13 degrees. We're going to be bang on tonight for that one. And the average rainfall there, you can see it. We usually get over 70 millimeters of rainfall. These are our current temperatures. So today it was pretty comfortable in terms of not just the temperatures, but how the air felt, because our dew points are quite low, as I was talking about earlier in the show. So the humidity, not bad. That'll be increasing a little bit too, along with those temperatures. And it's all because of this warm front that's headed our way. So yet another air mass is going to be moving in, and this one just a tiny bit stickier. Certainly be noticing it into southwestern Ontario. So as we go through the evening, we're doing pretty well with some drier conditions, but overnight tonight we'll see rain showers. Kind of breaks up as it gets towards the lower Great Lakes here, but still some showers lingering tomorrow morning. Few embedded thunderstorms possible. Midday we should start to get some breaks in that cloud, at least a little bit of sun coming through, but that just enhances the chance of some thunderstorms then bubbling up tomorrow evening. So kind of dry in the middle, but bookending with some wet conditions. There are those storms passing through into Tuesday night. For Wednesday morning, to the southwest we'll see some showers, but there's certainly a risk midday of getting some showers coming through the GTA as well. So I do have some precipitation in for Wednesday. There you go with those readings I was mentioning overnight tonight. Yes, we have increasing cloudiness, some showers rolling through, drier, hoping to get some sun coming through in the mid part of the day, but could see some evening return of rain showers. Look at these temperatures though. So the high tomorrow 25, Wednesday 26, we could reach 27 or so. Thursday 26, sunshine, and by Friday we're looking at 27, but again a mix of some showers. Probably next weekend the air will dry out a little bit again. CBC Toronto News will continue after the break.
While much of the world is tuning into what is going on in Minneapolis, so are some of the world's biggest stars. Many cultural figures have stepped up in various ways to respond and call for action in the aftermath of George Floyd's death. Yelena Adzik joins us now with more on this. And Yelena, let's start with the protests that we saw right across the U.S. and here at home too. Artists, musicians, performers taking part in these marches.
Yeah, well, you know what? Let's start with here at home, as you say, because in Toronto, we had protests happening. And Tory Lanez, for example, the rapper, he ended up sharing many posts on Twitter. This is one of them. He said, you know, I'm marching with the people today, just like yesterday, and again and again and again until we are heard, using the hashtag, the problem is bigger than us, and no justice, no peace. Similarly, performer Cardinal Official, he issued a tweet and some Instagram shots where he sent this aerial view of the city. And keeping in mind that the protest was largely peaceful in Toronto, but Cardinal Official wanted to make sure that the point was hit home that racism is not just an issue facing people south of the border and in the United States. We have to be here vigilant in Canada as well. Now, going down to the border, what's interesting, Dwight, is that we're seeing celebrities and people coming out and really taking a lot of action that we haven't quite seen when you think of, you know, the PSA videos or maybe some generic statements some actors might have on the environment in the days of the past. No, we're seeing actors getting beaten, getting bloody, and showing this. That's what happened with Kendrick. I'm going to give you a look at Kendrick Sampson. Now, he is an actor from the show Insecure, and he live streamed his entire encounter with the police during a protest, and he really wanted to show how he was attacked completely unprovoked. It was peaceful up until that point, and he says that he was shot by rubber bullets up to 7 different times. Now, you also have actors such as John Cusack. He posted audio saying that he was also provoked and attacked by the police after just simply filming them. Now, I'm going to give you a look right now at one particular rapper's speech, because this, again, is really taking activism to the next level. His stage name is Killer Mike, and the rapper and the activist, he spoke during a mayoral speech. This is in Atlanta, and it was really, really passionate. Have a listen.
It is your duty to fortify your own house so that you may be a house of refuge in times of organization. And now is the time to plot, plan, strategize, organize, and mobilize.
So that was at the Atlanta mayor's press conference. And it is worth noting when he talks about mobilizing, Jay-Z actually met with politicians. He met with political leaders, and he issued a statement after speaking with them. This is part of it. He says, I prevail on every politician, prosecutors, and officer in the country to have the courage to do what is right, have the courage to look at us as humans, dads, brothers, sisters, and mothers in pain, and look at yourselves. And his wife, of course, Beyonce, earlier on the weekend, she ended up posting a message to her followers, urging them to sign a petition. I'm not sure how much she herself had influence, but it is worth noting that Change.org has said that it is their largest petition to date, upwards of 10 million signatures now. So clearly, a lot of these actors are taking steps that would lead to some kind of actual change on the ground. And it is interesting to watch, Dwight.
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of Killer Mike's too. And, you know, he's the son of a police officer. He has members of his family in police service, and he speaks really eloquently on this subject. He's really good for that.
And from the heart.
He really
Absolutely.
does, yeah. So now let's turn our attention to some of the artists that are using their art form to send a message, right? Let's talk about one of my favorites, Spike Lee.
Oh, yeah. Well, Spike Lee, he ends up sharing this short film that he made, and he just posted this on his own Twitter account, and it is really striking when you see this footage. So what he did was take snippets of his 1989 film, Do the Right Thing, and he interspersed that with real-life footage from Eric Gardner as well as George Floyd, with what happened to him. And it is really striking to see how much, well, as you know, Dwight, Spike Lee has been prescient all along and showcasing in his movies what he feels has been going on in real life for decades. So this is something that is quite powerful. A lot of people sharing that film. But as you say, you know, these artists, these musicians, they're using their medium, they're using their voices to try and make some kind of a change.
Yeah, these issues are not new. Thank you for that, Yelena.
Talk to you soon.
After the break, stick around for today's Frontline Hero. We'll be right back. When patients in the ICU have to be intubated and are unable to communicate, Dr. Jesse May makes it his priority to answer family questions, explain care plans, and offer support. May is a third-year anesthesia resident at the University of Toronto, working at Toronto General Hospital. In an email, his partner, Elizabeth Miazga, told us the biggest reason that Jesse is my hero is that after working long days in the ICU, he comes home and spends his evening and weekends doing ventilator research. This isn't something he's paid for, just a volunteer project. This involves countless hours of research, writing, meetings, coordination, and even the occasional 2 a.m. trip to pick up and test various components of their ventilator. I am so impressed by his dedication to his work, his patients, and their families. So, thank you very much, Dr. Jesse May.
That's
Round of applause,
awesome.
yeah.
Yes, again, every night, right? Love these stories. Good for you, Doc. Now, let's go ahead and talk a little bit. Okay, I don't have a ton of time, but I want to show you what's going to be happening in the short term, but also, if we can, what's going to be happening with this week, because we're into June now, and we've got some mild temperatures coming our way above seasonal. This evening, a nice evening, dry, but increasing cloudiness overnight, showers developing and lingering into tomorrow morning with the odd thunderstorm possible too. And then tomorrow afternoon, I do believe we're going to see those clouds breaking apart a little bit and giving us some sunny breaks in there. In some cases, you may get a little more sun than others, but that will enhance the risk of having some showers or thunderstorms coming back at us into the evening. 25 will be the high, and those winds getting a little bit breezy at times coming out of the south. This is what I want to show you in terms of the 5-day forecast. Wednesday, yes, it's not going to be raining all day, but some rain back at us, but the temperature 26, the humidity building a little bit, and into Thursday too, sunshine, 26 degrees. By Friday, we're talking about 27, and yeah, bringing back a chance for some showers in there too. It's funny, it looks like it'll be somewhat mirroring last weekend, where some drier, cooler air will be moving in by Saturday, Dwight.
I'm not even looking at the weekend right now because last week it all changed on us by like Thursday. So we'll check back with you midweek. That is our show for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Chris Glover is away. Sorry, Mike Weiss is away. Chris Glover has you covered tonight after the National. We'll see you back here tomorrow at 6. Have a great night, everybody.